My name's Lilley. I'm Chief Technology Officer for an organisation called the Mutual Vision. Mutual Vision technologies have been around for since the late 80s. We provide banking software for building societies, and we cover about half the market in the building society sector. So the mutual sector is very important to us. We're actually unique in our sector in that we're owned by some of our customers. So the building societies actually own us as an independent software vendor, which is interesting. The first time I've come across that, but it's definitely a challenge and an opportunity. So, but you don't care about Mutual Vision, so I'll talk about, and you don't really talk about me, but I'm going to talk about me for a while. Just to give you a bit of background, I'm a software engineer by background. I've been doing this for a very long time. My engineering days were predominantly in middleware across a range of industries. I did travel, I've done insurance, banking, a lot of stuff in higher education, worked for 3 different universities over the years. So again, there's a lot of different areas there in terms of IT, but principally in what is now known as the API economy or that kind of area, which is actually very important right now because FinTech and the FinTech world, especially in finance. So I spent a lot of years introducing Agile stuff into organizations. I did my first Agile transformation in the year 2000, which tells you how old I am. And I've spent 20 years sort of using these Agile tools to get somewhere and to basically provide better solutions for customers. And I learned quite early on that Agile is a business thing, not a technology thing. If you have an Agile technology department and a non-Agile business, there's no point. You want to be, Agile is a business philosophy, and the IT department can't do it on their own and shouldn't be. One of the things that drives me crazy is when IT departments talk about the business, like the IT department isn't part of the business. It is, and it's part of the same thing. Then I went into started getting into sort of IT leadership, and I discovered quite amazingly, I'm a bit of an anarchist, in typical software engineering terms. Processes, something gets in my way. Learned that's not correct. I had an epiphany many years ago where I worked out that process can be my friend and can protect me. So it was a significant mind change moment for me, and it helped me in sort of getting into that management and leadership position. And I'll come back to that in a little while because it's important in terms of the subject for this tech talk. As a leader, I worked out that commerciality matters. It matters. You got to think who's going to buy your stuff. The fact that it's great doesn't matter. The fact that somebody's going to actually use it and want it is the most important thing. Therefore, that goes into numbers. My favorite quote on numbers is by Lord Kelvin, the first Lord Kelvin. If you cannot measure it, you cannot improve it. And therefore, you have to measure things. You don't know you're going faster unless you've got a speedo. I also learned about projects versus product. Product matters. Projects, yeah, they're a great way of finding money and for governing money. But in terms of IT, in my opinion, projects are pretty much redundant. Product matters, and that falls into the Agile world. So Mutual Vision, I joined Mutual Vision a couple of years ago to look at what it was going to be. Now, Mutual Vision's product set is relatively legacy over the in what we're talking about in terms of cloud terms. So my job was to find out where we want to be in 5 years. Given our environment and what our customers need, that's got to be, and it is, and ended up as a SaaS-based system sat in the public cloud. There's no argument about that, and our customers want it. And interestingly, our regulators want it as well. They can see the value of the stability that the public cloud brings. Again, I'll come back to that in a little while. So, that's a bit of background on me. I'm going to tell you what. So, one thing I got to do is I got a bunch of legacy software I got to move into the cloud now. What can you do? Pick it up and put it in there? You can do that. I can pick up a legacy 3-tier application and move it into the cloud. That's easy. Don't want to do that because it sort of bypasses a lot of the actual technological benefit. So we want to move it. We want to move into the cloud because the world's changed. And the world's changed in the last 10 years. 10 years, I wouldn't necessarily have suggested this, not for a risk-averse market like I'm in. But now, especially over the last year, things have changed. And the expectations of our customers have changed. And frankly, I've got to fulfill those expectations. The expectations of the regulator have changed. Now, as a business, Mutual Vision are not regulated, but all of our customers are. So therefore we are. I spend about 2 to 3 months of my life every year talking to auditors and explaining to them how things work and why they work in a particular way. So the expectations of the auditors and the regulators behind them have changed. So they want us in the cloud, but they want us to be very, very controlled in that world. We want to specifically talk about Azure. We had some choice, and I'm not particularly wedded to any particular technology. One of the reasons we chose Azure, and you've got to look at it in terms of what you need and what you have. So I had a bunch of people who already knew Microsoft products. So Azure seemed like the sensible route to take because I don't need to train everyone in cloud tech. I only need to do half the team. That's a good variable. So I've got staff that are comfortable with that Microsoft tool set. I also have some customers that find AWS, as the other leader in this area, questionable. AWS, I apologize if anybody's on here. Amazon as an organization don't pay their tax. They don't pay what our customers consider a due fare. And if you consider that the building societies are mutual organizations, their primary reason for being is the benefit of their members and the benefit of their communities. And that part of that is, paying your fair due in tax. So there's a couple of things there. So that sort of drew us towards that Microsoft Azure. And other than that, you take the variables you have and you need, and you apply those business variables to yourself. So I want to talk about the approach we took. So we want to move all this stuff, and I've got a 27-year-old Oracle product, and I've got to move that into the cloud. That's not an easy thing to do. It's actually 28 years old now. It's not a simple sort of thing to approach. So I want to talk about, and we were talking about this at the meta level, I want to talk about the technologies. That's cool. But then I want to talk about operational need and financial need, because all of those things, these are all variables that apply to how we do this. So I've got to move all these. That's our core product. It's 27 years old. It's brilliant. It's functionally rich. It looks 27 years old. So need to move that into modern technology. But I also have a bunch of digital products that I also need to move, and they need to follow in. But I'm in a risk-averse sector. So if you think about that, if I was to do a big bang thing, I can go away, spend 3 years, write a brand new system, come on. They don't want to change, because a big bang change like that, they have to report it to the regulator. They have to gain, it takes about a year to agree to change a system like that. So we can't do that, So I'm not doing the big bang approach. Another approach is the wrapper thing, where you start putting things around that core system and building wrappers around. I've got a personal experience of that, and it's not fun. That's simply because you never get back to fixing that middle bit, and then you end up in software you cannot support. So instead, it's what I call the ice cream scoop. So what we're doing is we're taking journey by journey of this big financial system, and we're moving it over into the cloud, section by section, journey by journey, to give value to the customers piece by piece. That involves a whole lot of thinking, because it's not just instantiate a bunch of new functions inside the cloud and play with them. This is right, with these things have to combine, and this is hybrid across public and private cloud. So as you can probably guess, that's complicated. It's doable, it's pretty fine, but at least at the end, I need to be able to switch off the old system and it just disappear. I do not want it hanging around. Also, our system's sat in Oracle, and frankly, that's just too big for what we need. We can use, that's a 1990s technology. I do not need it. So how do we do this? I use a metaphor with my staff with regards to, and customers with regards to a picture frame. I said we're going to move individual bits over into the cloud. Woohoo, that's great. But that can become swiftly chaotic. What you need to do is, it's a jigsaw puzzle. I don't know if anybody, I'm not a great jigsaw puzzle fan, but I like the metaphor, which is when you do a jigsaw, you do the outside first. You do it all the edges, and then you start building up the internals. You have to do that when you go into the cloud. You have to set up your tenancies correctly. You have to set up your security correctly around the outside, so that anything you do in it is already protected. You don't do this piece by piece. Yeah, you need to get your basic frame without all the internals, and then you can start building that little picture of a waterfall or a picture of a windmill, whatever it is in your picture frame. Sorry, your jigsaw puzzle. So get your frame done, then start moving stuff in, and that's what we've done. We've taken and we've built a frame to work in, and then we're gradually moving those items over into that sort of safe net. And then, so that's technological. You're talking about the three approaches. We've got an approach, got the metaphor of building those things gradually. But just as a hint, get your tenancy right. You will get it right quickly. Fail fast, simply because it's really hard to get it to retrofit it afterwards, especially when you're running customer systems in this, because they don't want it changed. You only want to change once. I mentioned security. Get your security done. The security it is phenomenal. I sold this to all my customers by simply saying I don't have sort of 3,000 to 6,000 people permanently looking at cybersecurity. Microsoft do. They spent billions on security. I can't match that in my little world. So I'm going to make good use of their security. But you've got to set it up right. And so that you've got to be able to prove it to in my case, to the regulators. I've got to prove that security works, because this is people's financial data. It's people's data. You've got to get that security right. The functions are there, but you've got to set them up. There are also cost implications. I stumbled across something that was quite entertaining, which is we set up a bunch of VLANs to segment things, which is great. Yeah, and then we found out that API management, the lovely tool in Azure, suddenly costs more, by a factor of 10 or 20, just because to use VLANs with VLANs, you need to get the service level up, and that goes up from $2,000 to 20 grand. So there's a significant impact there. So you need to do your cost modeling. I have this ridiculous spreadsheet of cost where I'm looking at every function I use within Azure, and I'm trying to predict, and I tried to predict how much all those things are going to cost when I put them together. I'll come back to that in a minute. So, when you think about the security developer setup, if you start choosing the developer elements of the functions and things within Azure, they're a lot cheaper and they're a lot less robust. And as soon as you put it into a production model, prices go up. So think about it. The other thing is technical diversity. I'm an engineer, I love this stuff. You know, we love putting all these little tools, and it's like you go into the Azure marketplace, it's got 300 new things since last time I looked. And it's like, oh, I could use that, and I could use a bit of that, and I could use a bit of that. There's a problem there though. So it's there you've got to look at management of technical diversity. I have 10 architectural principles, and that's one of the key ones. I'm not saying that the technology shouldn't be diverse, but manage it. You don't want suddenly 14 different type of databases to look at, because each developer has done their chosen their favorite, and then somebody leaves and you don't know how to use that function. You need to manage that technical diversity. I'm not precluding using, and there's some fantastic stuff, but just go and look at the data storage mechanisms within Azure, and there's hundreds of them. Manage the diversity, because you've got to be able to support this stuff when it goes live. So work out your approach to moving there if you're migrating. If it's brand new, greenfield, it's up to you, but manage your general approach to that migration. Think about your outside and then start working on the internals. Don't forget the outside. Get your security right, both for a cost thing and not, and then manage that technical diversity. Think about those things. And they're not technical, in a way, they're not technology things, they're process things, they're management things. Okay. Right, so technological. Now I want to talk about operations. So in my environment, I'm the CTO, but I act as the COO as well, because I run dozens of environments for customers and I look after them. Those production environments are my responsibility. Then we do managed service. So, and when you go into a SaaS environment, you're looking after everyone. So a couple of things you need to think about, and you need to think about them right at the start. One is configuration management. Azure is an intensely configurable thing. Rich will be able to talk about that. It's intensely configurable. And I need to trace every change that happens to an environment at all points. I need to know that I had a situation when we were trying to go live with something, and at some point in the configuration change, there was a misspelled URL. It took me a day to find it. This is not helpful. You need to get your configuration management done. And I know it's a boring ITIL configuration management database thing, but you need to think about it and how you're going to police it. How, because the developers will add functionality and add their own settings, let alone the settings that are required by all the services you write. So get it right and think about it actively. And then, of course, you've got to think about dependencies. So what's the dependency of that component on that component? Is it dependent? If it is, if one changes, does the other have to change? Now, loosely coupled stuff, woohoo, but you've got to know what is actually fundamental. If you change your settings of your key vault, it will affect all these other services. So make sure it works before you do it. So that's it. Release sign off. Oh my Lord, this is boring, but I'm sorry. Yeah, you've got to have, all those gates that PMO talk about, they're actually quite important, or very important. You need to be able to flow. Now, pipelines can do that for you, and we've got pipelines set up to, if somebody press a button, it can go straight out. No, can't do that, because there has to be a trail in our world, in the finance world, of when things go live. I watched a fantastic talk a couple of years ago by AutoTrader, and they said it's brilliant getting to live. We've got a whole DevOps thing. All the developer does is write their new code and press a button and it's live. I can't do that. There's absolutely no way, because when the auditors come and talk to me, they need proof that somebody with the authority to do so released into a particular version at a particular time into a particular environment. If that isn't there, it's a very bad thing. I know it sounds ridiculous, but you need it. So you need to think about, and whatever it is in your context, you need to think about what that release sign-off process is. You need to make it lightweight, but traceable. You need it. And you need to work out if and how you're going to maintain segregation of duties. If in the DevOps world, everybody gets access to everything, is that a good idea? Not particularly. Especially if, like me, you're dealing with financial data. And if you're PCI or anything else, you've got to think about segregation of duties and who has access to environments. And that means you need to go back to your tenancy again and how you're doing your tenancies. So segregation of duties, sign off. I know this is boring stuff, but it is actually very important. And configuration management, getting it right, because you do not want this stuff to go wrong when just by the misspelling of a URL. Okay, so operational, cool. I'm going to crack on because I'm running out of time. I'm sorry, God, punch me. Financial, yeah, changing from CapEx to OpEx is a serious thing for any business. We've built ISVs and the internal software as costing capital expenditure. You're moving to OpEx. To do that, you need reporting analytics. So you need to spend time thinking about that reporting and that ability to report on it. You've got to do it on a weekly, monthly basis. You've got to track this stuff so that you can estimate and talk to your finance team. Because if you're starting to rack up value, that's great because you've got more customers, but you need to predict it. And you've got to ensure that also the development, you've got stuff span up in development, you've got to shut it down, save yourself money when it's not being used. UAT environments, why are they running at 12 o'clock at night? You're not using them, so shut them down. So things like that, you've got to start thinking about the money. And I see people are already asking questions about that. But talk to your finance team, they are your friends. They understand this stuff in a way. They don't understand the technology, but they do understand the numbers. And you becoming very pally with them, they can really help you out. You need to do that for your success. Okay, so 3 things. Yeah, what's your technology? What's your operational? What's your financial? There's a bonus one. So the 4th one, which is education. Talk to your teams. Talk to product managers about it. They think they know about what the cloud means and they don't necessarily. Talk to your finance team, talk to your professional services teams. They need to understand it because they're the face of your company, and you will, they will need to use the same language you're using. So that's my sort of highlights of how you should go and approach that at the sort of the meta level. Just so you know, we've created we've completed an integration layer. We've got a whole set of application for a broker portal running in this stuff, merged with that offshore, legacy system. And we're saving money by going to Azure on a bunch of websites, saving those because I'm making good use of the technologies. I've got better security, I've got better fault tolerance. Woohoo! And I'm not even starting to use the benefit of the cloud properly yet.